Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. Happy day after Thanksgiving. I actually had myself in the wrong studio, so I apologize for the late start. Our show today is Authentic Achievements, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that stand in our way of achieving our goals. And to do this is somebody who is so proficient at mastering everything that she sets out to do. She's had an incredible life and backstory, and her journey is filled with joy and continuous accomplishments, including those of her daughter. Let's welcome Kim-ADELE Randall to the program. Hello. It's nice to see you, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, that'll teach me to be on mute, won't it, in the green room? Lovely to see you, and I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I was in the wrong studio. I'm like, hello, what's going on? But anyway, it's great to see you. I love when we have the red background, the powerful, take charge and just follow your heart, follow your intuition. But Kim-ADELE, as you know, we get lost, whether it's because we don't believe we're good enough or imposter syndrome. There's lots of reasons. But let's start off talking about a follow-up from last week. There's a couple of really cool things that happened. You talked about your TEDx speakership opportunity. You talked about your daughter. Tell our audience in case they missed that episode.
Yeah, so I was really lucky. One of my things on my bucket list to do before I was 50 was to do a TEDx. And I'm really proud to say that I did it a month ago now today, a month ago, 2 days ago. And it was a real experience and a real opportunity to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And it's great when I think about the title of today's show and those common excuses standing in the way. I've wanted to do it for years, and I've come up with a myriad of excuses as to why I couldn't apply. But what's the harm in applying? They can say no. So I think it's just taking that first step. And then we had a shorter show last week because I was really proud to go and see my little girl who'd achieved superstar of the school for the week. She's going to be 6 next week. And it just rounded off for her an amazing week where she'd passed some gymnastics awards. She'd passed 2 levels of swimming. She'd had an amazing parents' evening, reader of the week, and then culminated in superstar of the week. And it was so lovely to see her achieving things because, again, it doesn't matter how old we are, we start to doubt ourselves and we start to think that we're not good enough. The amount of times she used to come back to me and go, "Mummy, I'm not good at this." And I'd say, "Well, you're not good at it yet, darling, but look how much better you are today than you were last week, and how much better you were last week than the week before. How do you feel about it now?" "I'm quite good, Mummy, aren't I?" And it's lovely when you see those doubts replaced by hope, replaced by the what if, instead of what if it goes wrong, what if it goes right? So I was super proud of her, as I always am, and it was such a privilege to just watch her moment.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Kim-ADELE, what I think is so interesting about what we're going to discuss today is you have a perspective that I don't have because I don't have any children. And as you know, as we were children, as we grow up, at some point somebody told us that we weren't good enough, or that we shouldn't be doing it, or somebody else was better. And so you're a mom and you have to walk that line of protecting your daughter at the same time encouraging her. And when I say protect, I think a lot of times people will tell us not to do something because they're afraid we're going to fail. And then when we fail, how we're going to feel about it. So how do you walk this tightrope as a mom and as a cheerleader to give your daughter the best inspiration and at the same time keep her safe?
Oh, such a great question, Dr. Jacqueline, and such a difficult one. I mean, children don't come with manuals, do they? And I find myself constantly striving to find something else that I can do to help me be a better mum and to be there for her, and to tread that line between always being in her corner, because I am always in her corner. She's my North Star. And like any biased mother, I think there's nothing in the world that she can't do if she tries hard and believes in herself. But you equally want to be able to help her build some of that resilience. Children sometimes, and we do it as adults as well, when we're hurt, we lash out at other people because pity loves a party. And the amount of times she'll come home and say, well, mummy, so-and-so said that my writing wasn't very good, or that my colouring isn't very good, or that I wasn't very good at these things. And I'd be like, okay, well, let's look at that. How do you feel about your writing? And she goes, well, I think it's okay, mummy. And I said, well, that's all that matters, darling, is, if you think it's okay and your teacher thinks it's okay and mummy thinks it's okay, then you're probably in a good place. And I said, it doesn't matter that it's different to your friends, because both are equally good in their own way. We don't have to always be better than somebody. We can be equal to them and just be different. And can we not embrace that our differences are what makes us unique, and stop trying to always be better than? Being equal to is actually something to strive for. Your goal in life is to be the very best version of you. So your competition isn't everybody else. It's the you were yesterday. So how do we look at that and say, how do we compare? How was I today to yesterday? How was I this week to last week? How was I last week to last month? And take your strength from in here, not out there, because that's going to be the best way of building resilience and making you be more inclusive of the people around you.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. And hello to Arshana watching. Thank you so much. And also hello to Roland Friedel. One thing that I want to touch on, I think is really important, is when you think about what you just said about your daughter's writing and, how do you feel about it? And when we feel good about what we're doing, even though other people may be judging or making comments, they're still saying to themselves, darn, she's really confident in what she's doing. I wish I felt that confident, right? It's kind of like something, it's attractive to other people that we really appreciate our own qualities and what we're doing, whether it's at their level, not at their level. There's no scale. We just feel good about what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I love to see people try. I think, the amount of times I haven't put myself out there for fear of failure. And that's the only time you fail. The only time you genuinely fail is when you don't try. And I realize that now. And let's face it, it's taken me to be nearly 50 to realize that. So I'm a late learner. But I think, you've got to look at those parts and say, I wish I'd tried along the way, because actually I'm never going to achieve it unless I try, and unless I get comfortable that I'm going to get it wrong. Because you don't just wake up one day and be great at something. You have to learn how to do it, which means you get it wrong, you get up, you try again. If you think back to, and I know I use this analogy all the time, so forgive me, you're probably bored of it, but if you think back to when we were really tiny and we were learning to walk, we didn't get up one day and just go, here we go, off we trot and we're walking. We got up and we fell over, and we got up again and again and again and again, and we fell over a lot. And it's a good job we wore nappies, because we needed that padding the amount of times we fall down. And I see that with other children. But it was that dogged determination and that belief in ourselves, because we believe we're just like the people that look after us, so they can walk, so we can walk, so we're going to keep going. And I think, if we can tap into that belief again as adults and just keep trying and going, actually, it's not the mistake that defines us, it's what we do about it. So it doesn't matter how many times we fall, it's about how many times we get up. That's where the real measure of who we are and how we show up in the world really is. And I think it's giving that belief to other people. There are moments in all of our lives where we don't have that belief in ourselves, and we need somebody to step in and go, you've got this. I believe in you. Because then we can borrow that belief in the moments that we need it. And I think for me, one of the things I strive to do is, when I'm in a good place, is share my belief with everybody else, because it might just be what they need to get them over that hurdle.
Absolutely. And I think, to your point, that when we are a child and we have parents or caregivers or teachers or people who really do care about us, and they're encouraging us and they're supporting us, and then we become older and we have this awakening, we have an awareness, we're doing work on ourselves, and we realize, wow, I had it the whole time and I didn't realize it. But in between, there's a lot of decades where we're really confused because people are swinging and throwing rocks at us. And as we go through our lives, it's kind of like, wow, I've got decades of information that is really confusing. So if we try to sort that out for people, especially for younger people who, I'm 59 to be 60 next year. I know you just mentioned 50, but we like to save people a lot of time that they don't have to go and undo everything. So if we first start with imposter syndrome, what does that mean to you? And what can we do today so that we don't feel that way tomorrow?
Oh, great question. And for me, I suffered from my own inner imposter for nearly 40 odd years. So I was convinced, my background was hairdressing. I'd got this big corporate role, and I was convinced that someone was going to turn around one day and go, oh my goodness, we put the hairdresser on the board, get her off. And it never happened. But every day, no matter what award I won, no matter what accolade I got, no matter how high I got up in corporate life, I was convinced that I shouldn't be there, that I was a fraud, that I wasn't good enough. And for me, I had two breakthrough moments. One I shared last week when I unfortunately found a lump with my little girl. And the other one was it was a little bit before that, when I suddenly realized that what I was telling myself made no sense. And what I mean by that was I was being given some amazing feedback by people I really admired and respected, people that I aspired to be like. And yet, no matter what they said to me, I used to brush it off with, if only they knew. If only they knew what really happened. If only they knew what they really got. And then it struck me for a moment that inadvertently, I was making my opinion that I wasn't very good more valid than the people I aspired to be like. I thought, that makes no sense. I don't value my opinion more than I value theirs. So why am I so determined to believe my view is right and not their view? And that when I really started digging into the way our brains work. And our subconscious brain is the happiest little helper that we're ever going to have in our life. But it comes with one very significant flaw. It doesn't understand the difference between help and harm. So it doesn't know if what we're telling ourselves is helpful to us or harmful to us. So I've learned this 3-step trick to kind of reframe my thinking in those moments of doubt, which crop up on all of us all of the time. The first one is you have to acknowledge it. You can't trick the brain. You can't make it change direction, because it will just look for the next chink in your armor to come back. So if you tell yourself you're not good at something, you have to go, okay, what evidence is there of that? And that happy little helper will run back into the library of your brain, and it will find all the times you got it wrong. And its desire is just to keep you safe. So then what you have to say is, okay, so I can get it wrong. Are there any occasions where I've got this right, or where I've been successful, where I've done this? Because again, what it will do is it will run back into the library of your brain, and it will find all the times where you achieved, where you succeeded, where you came up with something that you didn't think that you were going to be able to achieve. And then you can look at it and go, so I can get it wrong, but I can get it right. So on this new fact base, what choice am I going to make? And for me here, I always insert my little girl, as I've made no secret of. She is my North Star. She's my guiding light. And I say to myself, if this were Scarlett, what advice would I give her? And my advice would always be, take a risk, try hard, and believe in yourself. Because what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you're going to learn one way not to do it. But that's going to get you one step closer to achieving. But imagine if it goes right. Imagine if you achieve in that first go. And so I say to myself, what advice would I give her? And then I make myself take that advice. So what I share with people now is, swap Scarlett out for whoever's the most important person in your world, the person who you are in their corner, that you are their wind beneath their wings, and become the wind beneath your own wings.
Wow, that's so beautiful and powerful. I love that. I really do. Can you think, and you've been so gracious and transparent to share your backstory, which is amazing. So if anyone hasn't heard it in depth, please go over to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV, and radio, and go to the playlist Authentic Achievement. When you think about people in your life, people that maybe were in your life or people who are in your life now, and they've gone through things that maybe they didn't think they could get through, what are some of the things that you've heard people share, even your coaching clients, that people have shared that pulled them through? What was the thing that they grasped onto to get past that imposter syndrome?
It's a great question, and a lot of it is clinging on to the thing that you can. We look at a problem, we look at the whole problem, and it feels overwhelming. And actually, what you have to look at is go, is there anything in all of this that I don't believe I can do? Is there anything that I can do? And if there's one thing, no matter how small, no matter how seemingly insignificant it is, take that step. And that's been the thing that's come back time and time again from clients that I've helped, from friends that I've known that have gone through difficult things, is when the problem is overwhelming, they look at what's the one tiny thing, no matter how insignificant, the one tiny thing that we can cling on to. And then they take that step, because with every step we change our vantage point. Something new comes into view. And Dr. Jacqueline, I love a good quote. It reminds me of a couple of them. The first one is from Michael Jordan, which is, you don't need to see the whole staircase, you just need to take the next step, because with every step you change that vantage point. And the second one is from Einstein. The life only makes sense if you keep moving forward. It's like being on a bicycle. So you've got to keep that momentum going, because once you do, you drive better energy. You empower yourself to see what you can achieve. And I think for me, the key thing for people to do is, in every day, take a moment to recognize what you have done. We're very good as human beings at recognizing all the stuff we haven't done yet. But unless we take that moment to look at what we did achieve, what steps did we take today, even if they were tiny, we took them. We took them and we moved forward. And we have to give ourselves credit and acknowledgement for those, to give us that opportunity to build the motivation. If you think about climbing Everest, it's got base camp and camps along the way for a number of reasons, one of which is to allow you to look back and see how far you've come, to give you the motivation to keep going.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I had no idea about that. That's interesting. I also want to say hi to Tracy Cram-Perkins. Thanks so much for being with us today. Kim-Adele, something that I think is the great equalizer or not is the ability to have and not have money. And I think that money and finances are definitely an area that breaks people down, that people lose their confidence, that they start to lose their way, they start to question themselves. And at the same time, if we look in mainstream media, we look at A-list celebrities, people have incredible amounts of money. When they don't have their health, it doesn't matter how much money they have. There's nothing they can do. They can't buy their health. But yet, as much as we should value our health, many times we value our money, or the lack of it, more so. And that becomes an excuse of why we can or can't do something. I don't have the money. I have to take care of these bills. I have all these responsibilities. I'd like to look at doing this, but. How can we accept the fact that money comes and goes? Right? It's something that we absolutely need, but at the same time, it can make or break us emotionally.
Oh, that's so true. And I get that. I've had moments even recently where I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills, and I get how terrifying that is when you look in your purse and you've not got enough to cover food for the next few days. It's terrifying, particularly as a parent. But when I look back overall, there's been moments of my life that I've been extremely, extremely financially successful, and moments in my life where I've been completely the opposite. But actually, like you say, the things that we take for granted are the things that come to us for free. And yet, at the point that we end up reflecting on our life, and very often we hear this when unfortunately really rich, famous people have been reflecting at the end of their lives, they realized that the thing that they placed value in wasn't the thing that really brought them joy. And the things that they valued at that point, like you say, they couldn't buy their health. They couldn't buy having a family around them that loved them, and the friends that were there because they'd spent too much time invested in going and getting money. And I think that is one of our big challenges. The most precious things in life come to us for free. And as a result of that, we don't value them until we don't have them. Whereas money is something that we start off not having, and therefore we value it consistently, even when at the end of the day, the things that come to us for free and are priceless also can't be bought.
Very well said. Thank you. And Kim-Adele, you've also shared with our audience, and I have a similar life track, that you've moved a number of times. I've moved a number of times as well. And yet there's some people who are in the same town where they grew up, and they love it, or they're afraid to leave, or whatever the situation is. Many times we use our circumstances of how we grew up or where we grew up as an excuse as to why we can't do something, or we're not supposed to do it. No, I was meant to stay in this small town doing XYZ. But that's just sort of like a coat we put on to keep ourselves warm, because we're afraid to find out what it might be like to drop it and actually go test a different climate. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I love that, and so well put. I always joke that it's a bit like having a duvet of steel. I don't know if anyone watching or listening has ever had those moments where you're a little bit, you hear a noise in the house and you don't really know what it is, and the first instinct is to get the sheet or the duvet, whatever you're under at the time, and like pull it up a little bit closer, like that's going to protect you from anything in the world, because it clearly isn't. But I think we do that with our past. A lot of people that I went to school with still live in the villages that we grew up in and work there, and are really happy in what they in their lives, and that really works for them. But I knew for me it wasn't where I was supposed to be. But for many years I reflected on, maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, because maybe I should have had that life. Maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. But I think we have to just look at it and go, I'm meant to take risks. I'm meant to push out of my comfort zone. And whatever the risks are, they need to be appropriate for you. One person's risk will be too much for somebody else's, whereas for another person, it won't be enough. So I think, again, we've got to look inward and go, the only person that is guaranteed to be with you for life is you. You are the only person guaranteed to be there on the day you're born and still be there on the day you die. So we have to start learning to look inwardly at our inner compass to say, does this feel right for me? Is this a good risk? And, I always take an external barometer that says, is it kind? Is it going to harm anybody else? And can I deal with the worst that can happen? And as long as the answer is yes to those three, then it's against my risk compass, my inner risk compass, as to whether I push on and take that risk.
And taking risk is obviously a scary thing for a lot of people, and some people embrace it. It's amazing, isn't it? People skydiving, hang gliding, giving up their business and moving to an island and starting all over again. And then you have people who are just holding on for dear life to whatever it is that they've known. And I find myself, just in my own life experience, that it is truly liberating to be curious about something else. What else is out there? What else can I do? Who else can I speak with? For example, as you know, Kim-Adele, on this platform, we have people from all over the world, and we get to hear how they're living, what their life looks like. But yet, in many places in the world, people are just identifying with their own community members, the people that they see, the people who look like them, the people who live like them. And we're really breaking all of those patterns here and just embracing everyone from around the world. So I'd really encourage people to be curious. What else is out there for you? And when you take that opportunity, what can you learn from it? And to your point, we've discussed this, it's not always going to be beautiful. It's not always going to be, congratulations, here's a cake. No, sometimes it might be self-reflection. Sometimes it might be, oh my gosh, I didn't realize where I was before I took this step. I've got some work I need to do.
Yeah, so true. And I love such great advice. Starting from a position of curiosity, because sometimes we feel we've got to be all in or all out, then that can hold us back. That can stop us from taking any steps because we fear the full-on commitment of something that we don't know. But when we start to go, actually, I'm not saying I want to do this or not. I'm just saying I'm curious about it. I'd like to learn more. I'd like to understand it a little bit better. When somebody comes to us with a different opinion to us, it's human nature. It's in all of us to immediately come up with whether we agree or disagree with that. We make a judgment in that moment. If we think that's right, we think that's wrong. But if we can swap that judgment for curiosity to go, okay, interesting, I've never thought of it like that. I wonder, could you explain to me a little bit more about how you came to that conclusion? What steps did you take? And get equally curious with yourself. Why am I so quick to assume that that's right or that's wrong? What is it that's making me believe this? What backstory have I got that's pulling in there? Because curiosity is the greatest illuminator. Once we're curious, we're not saying we're committed. We're not saying we're definitely going to do something. We're not pushing out of that comfort zone straight into the panic of, and we've all done that. We've got to that place, yeah, we're going to do this, and you get and go, why did I say yes to this? As I'm clinging to the top of some ridiculous outdoor thing that I've said that I will take part in. But it's like, instead, if we're just curious, then we can gather more information, we can make a more informed choice, we can see if there is a step that feels comfortable to us. And then with each of those steps, we can see, again, if we continue to be curious, we may find we get to a place that goes, yeah, that feels uncomfortable. I'm no longer curious. I was curious enough, and that's it. But we'll see that we've come so much further. Or we'll find that curiosity spurs more curiosity and allows us to keep going. Because that's how we learn as children. Children are the most fascinatingly curious little beings. And they live a life of wonder. And I was on a train just this week. So forgive me sharing another personal story, but I was sat on this train with these really excited children, and we were heading into London. And it turns out they were being taken out for the day by a charity that supports children from underprivileged areas. And it was probably the first time these children have been on a train and the first time that they'd been to London. And just listening to them and watching them, anything that went past, it was like you went through the first tunnel they thought was the underground, or you went past and they saw cows and sheep, and things I take for granted all of the time because I do that journey at least once a week. But they saw it with the wonder of curiosity. What is that? Why is that? Why has that happened, miss? I thought, imagine what our lives would be like if we could bottle that childhood curiosity and apply it to our adult reality.
I absolutely love that. Thanks for sharing that story. It's like, what would our life be like if we looked through someone else's eyes and saw it from a different perspective? Kim-Adele, one of the other common excuses that we all use at some point in life is, I'll get around to it. I can't do it right now, but I'll get to it. And it's so funny. When I was growing up, I remember this. There was this round disc that somebody actually decided to make, and it had TOIT, TOIT. So when someone would say, I'll get around to it, the person would hand it out. Here's a round to it. What are you going to do with it? So, but it's actually an excuse that we use to give ourselves time to come up with a different excuse, because as we know, in order to achieve something, we have to have a plan. We have to take action. People will say, I'm going to try. And I'll say, what does that mean, try? Either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And that's where I think people get caught up. So they use these terms and then they start to become part of their everyday vocabulary. I'll get around to it.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to get around to it unless you actually have a commitment and a plan to do it. Do you agree?
Completely agree. And there was a study, and forgive me, I can't remember if it was Harvard or Stanford that did the study, but they went and looked at, I think it was 100 people, and they identified, of these 100 people, 87% didn't have a goal in mind. So they had no idea what it was they were trying to achieve. 13% had a goal. So they had a goal. 3% of them had the goal written down and had some kind of plan, even if it was a terrible, terrible, terrible plan, and it was never going to help them achieve the goal. But they had a plan, and they had a destination in mind. And when they came back and checked the results a year later, the 3% had outperformed the next group tenfold. And if you think about it, I always look at life as being a little bit like getting in a car with a sat nav. When you get in the car and you set your sat nav, what's the first thing that you do? You tell it where you're going, because it can't work it out unless it knows where you're going. And what's the second thing you have to do? Tell it where you are, because until it knows where you are and where you're going, it can't calculate the best way for you to get there. So I think for me, the greatest lesson I learned was to start off with knowing where it is I want to go. Even if I change my mind later, know where it is I'm going to go. Know where it is that I'm starting from. Be really realistic about what that is. And then start to think about, what are my options? They may change. I may start off now, I'm in London and I might want to go to Edinburgh, but there's lots of ways I could get there. I could get a train, I could drive, I could walk. It'd take me a long time. I don't think I'd actually manage it. But there's 100 ways that I could get there. And it's in saying, which one am I going to start off with? Which one am I going to assume is the first part of my plan? Because then if it doesn't work out, I can come back and go, okay, so the train didn't work. There was a cow on the line. I need to now swap. What other options were available to me? But I think it's having that sense of where we're going and giving some thought into, how might I get from where I am today to where that is? And of those things, which ones look doable right now? Because if we can do that and keep doing the ones that look doable right now, and stay open-minded and curious to the art of the possible, then before we know it, we have moved forward. I guess that's the thing I've learned in overcoming any of the plot twists that life's thrown at me, is I've kind of looked and go, where do I want to be? Well, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be feeling like this. So what can I do to get from here? Well, I don't know, because this feels overwhelming, but what step can I take? Can I set myself a goal that I can celebrate when I get to the end of it? And some days that goal was to adult appropriately for 12 hours. And some days it was a significantly bigger goal than that. But it's about being able to take those steps and acknowledge yourself for achieving them.
What a great share. As always, Kim-Adele, I just love it. Something that I'll share is the journey many times can take decades. It could take years, it could take months, it doesn't matter. And something that I embarked on was to get my doctorate. I remember it was 2006. I was working my corporate career. I also had a part-time job doing makeup, because I'm always somebody who's doing something. And I was in this really dysfunctional personal relationship, which meant I was in love with a guy who wasn't in love with me and who had no time for me. So I thought, what else can I do so I can stay in this toxic relationship, but fill my time? So I decided, hey, I'll go for a doctorate. And long story short, that was 2006, and I applied, and it was a 5-year, almost 6-year journey. And during that journey, there were many times when I had to really revisit, what was the reason I was doing this? Was it because I was in a dysfunctional relationship and filling up time, or did I really want to have a doctorate? And so I had to constantly look at, what were my goals, what were my objectives, and then how could I stay committed? Because working full time, I was traveling the world. So I was doing all of my work at night. I was working on the weekends. And so it took a huge commitment. And the reason I bring it up is that we have to constantly go back and reevaluate, why am I doing this? What am I learning through this process? What do I want as an outcome? And people in the program, people I was close to, they actually dropped out because they could no longer find their why. And it wasn't as important. Some other things were. But to me, it was very important. And then when I graduated, I thought everybody would call me Dr. KERBECK, at my company. And they told me, no, you're either a salesperson or you're an academic. So I kind of felt like, wow, I didn't even get that respect. And so the reason I bring it up today, I have trademarked Dr. Jacalyn, because that's really important to me. That's part of who I am. But back in 2006, which was a long time ago, I couldn't see this. I couldn't see this is where I would be. I don't know where I'm going. So I leave that out to the audience, that unless you put yourself out there, you have no idea the opportunities that are going to come. You couldn't even imagine them, just like what you've been through. Your story about being a hairdresser, you could never imagine that you would be where you are today.
It couldn't. And beautifully said, as always, Dr. Jacalyn. I think sometimes what drives us, and it's having to come back to that internal drive, as you did with your doctorate, the going back and saying, is it because it's important to me, or is it because I'm actually trying to avoid this situation over here, which is a toxic relationship that I shouldn't be in anymore? And I think we have to be able to pull those parts in to say, I pinch myself every day that, I started out, I thought I knew where my life was going. I was going to get married. I did get married and was going to live in, the villages that we grew up in, and run my little hairdressing salon and be happy and content. And I am happy and content, and I've had an amazing life and met amazing people and continue to meet amazing people. But it's not the life I thought that I had. And I kind of realize now that the plan is often bigger than you. The plan's there. So actually open your mind to when the opportunities come. And I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt that says, if, you have to do something that scares you every day. No matter, it doesn't have to terrify you, just scares you a little bit, because that's how we grow. That's how we get to do things that we learn from, and we get to say, oh, look at that, I survived, and I learned something, and I grew. And I think knowing your why, and for me, as well as my why, I needed to know my who. So whenever I'm doing anything, it's like, am I doing this for me? Am I doing it for my little girl? Am I doing it for somebody else? But knowing that helps me when times get really tough to dig in and find the resilience to keep going.
That's the key, is pulling yourself up by your socks. What's that? Is that a British expression?
I think so. Yeah. we have some gems, don't we, to be fair?
I love them. I love them. They're classic. But that's really what it takes. And so what we've discussed earlier, there may be people in your life who don't gather rounds. They don't say, hey, let me help you pull them up. There could be people saying, you can't do it. Like everything we've discussed. Don't let that deter you, because people have their own reasons for reacting the ways that they react. And many times it could be fear of losing you. Because you're going to go do something that they're not going to participate in, and maybe all of a sudden you don't have these things in common because you're growing and they're not.
Absolutely. And it can be fear that if they're supporting you to go and do it, that people may question why they're not doing it for themselves. Because actually, while I'm supporting you to get out of your comfort zone, it's very uncomfortable to stay in my own. So actually, I used to have a saying where I worked, which was like, pity loves a party. So, if I'm feeling a little bit insecure and a little bit down, then if actually I can pull other people back in there with me, then I'm not alone. It's not just that I'm not brave enough. It's the fact that actually it's a big, old, tough, scary world out there. And I see that all the time. In my corporate career, I used to see it all the time, where people would get stuck and they would be feeling uncomfortable and fearful for themselves. And then they would go and almost pass that fear on. And there's a story that I heard once. I don't know if it's a true story or not, but I use this quite a lot, about two cousins that were climbing a tree, and their parents, the fathers of each of them was there. And there was a sudden really, really heavy gust of wind. And one parent said to its child, be careful, hold on. And the other one said, be careful, don't fall. Now, the child that was told to hold on, held on. And the child that was told, don't fall, fell. And the reason being is we have to imagine what it is you've asked us to do first. So for you to tell me not to fall, I first have to imagine what falling looks like. And once I imagine it, it becomes my reality. So I try really hard now with my little girl and with other children when they come round to look at what I want them to do, not what I don't want them to do. And actually ask yourself, how many times do you set your goal in a negative? I don't want to be broke. I don't want to not be able to pay the bills. I don't want to be stuck in this job. I don't want to be doing this. So when you achieve whatever it is you've set out to do, all you've achieved is not doing something you didn't want. Whereas if instead you can swap it round to, what do you want? I want to have money in the bank. I want to be successful. I want to be able to go and do that job, to go and live in that place, to go and sing on that stage, to go and do that TEDx. Then actually, when you achieve it, you've got something to be really proud of.
Absolutely, Kim-Adele. And I think it comes back to, once again, those limiting beliefs. When we use the negative, even when it comes to money, I'll never have that. There's no way I could earn that. That's not true, because money comes and goes. If you think about the flow of how much money you have or don't have in the course of your life, it's here, it's gone, it's here, it's gone. So it's the same thing with these limiting beliefs. They can come and go, but believe in who you are and follow that passion that you have in your heart. Because if you don't, you'll always have regrets. And those regrets can come out in many ways, including in your health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we do untold damage to ourselves when we hold everything in, because it's all about our energy, isn't it? And they say that disease should actually be said dis-ease. It's a body that is not at ease with itself because it's not in flow. It's not got good energy. And when we push our energy away, when we don't acknowledge it, it comes out in other places. And it was really hard for me to acknowledge that I am both the hero and the nemesis in my story. So for everything that went right, that's because I helped drive it. But equally, for everything that went wrong, that was because of choices I made. That was because of things that I did. Because we are a consequence of our choices, and that's really tough to admit when you've had a life that's had lots of plot twists in it.
So true. And again, as we said before, many times that's where something incredible is going to happen. You're going to learn something, you're going to embrace something, and you're going to pick it up. It's like you're on the football field. You're going to pick up that ball and you're going to run into the end zone and score that touchdown. But if you never picked up the ball, you don't know what you're missing. You're missing that big play. So we just encourage everyone to get out there, to take these excuses, acknowledge that they're there, get rid of them, and get out of your own way. Be curious and go out there and try something new.
I love that. It's so true. I think when you find yourself saying something that you don't want, ask yourself, what do I want? And then make that the thing you focus on.
Brilliant. Once again, another fabulous episode. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to spotlight you. Anything you have coming up that you want to invite people, interviews or any coaching? I know that this is a big Black Friday here in the States. It's a big opportunity for people to offer promotions for their services. So let people know how you can help them.
Absolutely. So if you're stuck and you want to get out of your way, particularly business owners. So most of my work is done with business owners who find themselves stuck working in the business, not on the business, and they're frustrated that all roads lead to them. And for many of them, they're frustrated by breaking the next £1 million barrier. So if that's you, please get in touch. If you get in touch and mention today's show, then you'll get 25% off our services. And we are determined to help you be the best that you can be. You can get in touch directly at kim@kimadelrandall.com. I'll find out more about what we're doing. And my little dog Pudding is clearly wants to spur you on there. Thanks, Pud. You can also find out more about us at www.AuthenticAchievements.com.
25% off, Kim Adele. Woo! That's amazing. Everybody, are you hearing that? 25% off. Please take down the information. Contact Kim. It's kim@KIM-ADELE'S.com. Also her website, AuthenticAchievements.com. And a big hello to Pudding. Can we see Pudding?
Of course you can see Pudding, who wanted to be in the show.
Hi, Pudding. So cute. How old is Pudding?
So he's just turned 15 months, and he's my little mascot, and he's my little girl's best friend.
Oh, he's such a cute. Let's see your face, Pudding. Pudding. There you are. What a sweetie. Oh, so beautiful. Beautiful family, Kim Adele.
Oh, I am. I'm so very blessed. I've got the most loving little family with my little girl and my little boy, albeit one human and one furry. But they're such great reflections of what it is that's important in life. Their genuine love for life and for everybody they meet is something that inspires me daily to try and be the best that I can be.
And, it reminds me of just unconditional love, innocence, and just that sweetness that as adults we lose it. We can get it back, but it's not the same as when a puppy or a child. It's beautiful. So congratulations, and I wish you a fabulous weekend, and thank you again for sharing today.
Thank you, and I'll see you next week. You take care. Have a lovely week.
You too. Bye, Pudding. Bye. And thanks to each and every one of you for watching, for engaging, for liking. I really do appreciate it. I have a special thank you right now. One of our guests on a show that we have called Entrepreneur and So Much More. It's a show that I do with Justin Rigliani. One of our guests, Joseph Del Campo, he's a photographer. He sent me a beautiful piece of his work. I received it, I think, 2 days ago. And he had actually asked if I not mention it on social media. So, of course, I didn't. But I reached out to him and I said, it's in my studio. I'm looking at it every day. And I just want to let you know how much it means to me. He took the time to send me one of his beautiful photographs for me to have in my studio. And here it is. I want to share it with you. Look at this. It is absolutely exceptional. It is I just can't tell you how much I appreciate this. And I would love for you to reach out to him. I'm going to put his contact information up on the screen. So his name again is Joe Del Campo. He's an entrepreneur, founder, creator, photographer, and you can contact him right there at his website. He does beautiful work. If you are in the United States, he's in the New Jersey area, Philadelphia area, you can actually contact him and he can work with you for your own custom photo shoot, or else you can just go to his website, which is jdcphotog.com, and you can see the work that he has there, and you can get something and add it to your home and have some special meaning, because Joe is a great guy. I'm sure he'll reach out to you personally. You can connect, and then you can share with him things that are important to you, what you'd like to have in your surroundings, and you can work together. So thank you, Joe, from the bottom of my heart for thinking of me. I really do appreciate it. Our next show is coming up. It's The Power of Etiquette and Manners. And if you haven't seen this show, I really encourage you, wherever you are, just stay there. We'll be coming right back. This is not a show for posh people. This is a show for everyone. This is where we learn about emotional intelligence, respect, integrity. We're going to talk about table manners. We're going to talk about afternoon tea, but we're going to talk about how do we show up and interact with each other? How do we communicate effectively? How do we deal with the anxiety that we might have when someone else approaches us? How do we deal with people in other cultures? Do we look them in the eye? Do we look away? Each culture has different requirements, that customs that we really should get to know. We explore all of these things on the show with the principal and founder of the British School of Excellence, Philip Sykes. We did a special event here this past week on Tuesday, the 22nd, which was actually just a few days ago. It seems like a year ago. It's just a few days ago. And we actually had a number of graduates from the Train the Trainer program, and they were talking about how they have become certified etiquette coaches in their country and how life-changing it's been. So once again, opportunities present themselves that you may never even have thought of. So stay tuned, do join us and find out, be curious. What can you learn about afternoon tea? What can you learn about etiquette and manners? What can you learn about emotional intelligence? Thank you again for being here. We'll be right back. Bye.